The informational forum for municipal officials that we host every year.
On Wednesday, the Appropriations Committee invited members of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities and the Connecticut Council of Small Towns to discuss the potential impact of the governor's proposed budget.
Make no mistake, the second year of the biennial budget spells trouble for residential and business property taxpayers. Unfortunately, the levels of state aid to municipalities are insufficient to meet the growing costs to towns and cities. Governor Rell has proposed virtually no changes to the levels of statutory formula grants. That simply won't do the job. Municipal costs for personnel, education, insurance, and energy won't stop rising because state funding is flat.
Inadequate funding for programs like education cost sharing, special education, as well as the Pequot Aid, pilot, LoSIP, Town Aid Road merely shifts the state financial burdens to municipalities and result in untenable increases in local property taxes. The governor's proposed budget, insofar as it flat funding, essentially no help to municipal aid programs, force the towns to rob Peter to pay Paul, or just lay off or cut back.
We are limited by your authority and how we can raise money. In other states, there are many other revenue opportunities for towns, whether it's a local income tax, a local sales tax, franchise fees, easement fees for use of our owned right-of-ways for cable TV companies, electric power companies, telephone companies. The state chose not to give those authorities to the towns. So I guess I'm asking you to open that door and start looking at ways that we can raise money that are not reliant on property taxes. I'll give you just one example that I just personally did the math. If we were allowed to charge $10 per vehicle in our town, that would raise statewide $30 million. If that was dedicated to be used for the same purposes as Town Aid for Road, you have effectively doubled the amount of road work that we've done.
This idea of having more taxing authority at the local level, and the idea of the $10 per vehicle tax is very interesting, because being in a small town, I know that Town Aid Road dollar just doesn't go that far anymore, and I'm intrigued by your suggestion on that one. So we'll have to look more into it, and I'll talk to some of my friends on the Finance Committee.
We rely on one-time revenue sources, which we try not to do, and in fact I'm pledged to try not to do that in Bridgeport, but it's very difficult not to. We're currently assessing all city-owned assets to position some of those for resale onto the private market. We're considering selling one of our parks to the federal government. We're considering selling the airport. We're considering selling all the city municipal buildings. We're doing whatever we can to make our city the most efficient and leanest and greenest that we can, but we can't do it without your help. And last year your help really did make a difference, I can tell you.
There's a lot of things that we need to do and erase those lines between the towns as you think of ways to distribute funding. And if you could funnel more of the funds through the COGS and encourage more of the regional cooperation, you'll start to see more and more savings.
Last year, the biennial budget established an overall statewide increase of a little over 9% for aid to municipalities, if I remember correctly. And this year, it's less than that, but 2 to 3% range. I'm trying to remember the precise numbers. I don't have them in front of me. But as a biennial basis, that's a pretty substantial and historic increase. And the language that ended up being adopted last year allowed, there was discussion of whether it had to all go to education or whether or not it would allow you some flexibility to either do other programs or cut taxes. The 9+% last year, did any of the municipalities find it possible with that increase to reduce their property taxes?
Yes. It was a little difficult last year because of timing. A lot of our budgets advance and have to be approved in advance of yours was the longest of long sessions, I guess.
We adopted it after you probably adopted your
But we held off.
budgets.
We had an approved budget, but we held off adopting our mill rate because in many towns, that's a separate process.
Yeah.
So we were able to reduce from what was the public approved by $500,000 due to your education aid.
And last year, your assistance really did make a difference. We were able to not raise property taxes last year. And sometimes it isn't reducing property taxes as we like to, it's not raising them. That's a big victory for us.
Subcommittees of the Appropriations Committee are currently reviewing the governor's budget plan in detail and will submit a revised version for consideration later in the session.